Hey, hey, hey! Welcome to my cozy corner of the internet. This is Nephilim VA bringing you the 12th chapter of Inheritance, written by A is for Amy 71 on AO3. Let's cautiously step into the trigger warnings because I can't confirm this will be a wholesome chapter. This fanfiction is for mature audiences with canon-typical violence and a trigger warning for major character death. If that isn't your style, then I recommend Shades of Green, which is written by Maybe As Friendly on AO3. It can be found on my channel! Canon Divergence is the name of the game, and it indulges the what-ifs of Midoriya Izuku having a quirk. With that being said, the chapter summary is as followed. Izuku tests out one of his new quirks and finds out that Shigaraki Tomura is still lurking. Now I implore you to sit back and relax whilst I read to you. Chapter 12. Izuku stayed home from school the next day. His leg was achy, and the pain pills his dad urged him to take made him groggy, so he mostly spent the day on the couch, half dozing and trying to read his notes for a history test he'd be having the next day. When he finally went back, he found a matcha-flavoured Kit Kat on his desk, with an apology note from the girl who had accidentally cut him with her quirk. He was mildly annoyed with her for being careless, but he wasn't angry. He met her eyes across the classroom and gave her a thumbs up to show her there were no hard feelings. She looked incredibly relieved. He also got a lot of attention from the other kids who were impressed the fact that he had staples holding his leg together. Much to his surprise, Sir Night-Eye was waiting for him at the school gates to pick him up. Izuku had been planning to take the train to Might Tower, despite the splint still making him walk stiffly. Instead, Sir had bought his car and drove him so he didn't have to deal with an extra inconvenience. At Might Tower, All Might was sitting in his smaller form, in the extra-large armchair, absorbed in some papers that looked like the boring documents his dad was always reading. He looked up briefly to greet Izuku, but went back to reading immediately. Gran was napping on the couch, a half-eaten taiyaki on a plate on the low table in front of it. Izuku grinned. "We'll go to my office for this," Sir told him, ushering him through the room. Izuku took a seat in a chair across from Sir's desk, while the man tapped some keys on his computer. "Sir?" Izuku said while the man was finding what he wanted on the computer. He asked absently. "Did you hear about the guy who drank a bottle of food colouring?" Sir's hands paused on the keyboard, letting Izuku know he was listening. "He died a little inside." Sir actually barked out a short laugh at that one, and resumed typing. Izuku grinned. A few moments later, Sir picked up a clipboard with a sheet of paper on it, and clicked a pen to prepare to write. "I have a list of languages here that I'm going to play for you on the computer, and you will tell me what the person is saying. It will be a different simple sentence or phrase in a different language each time. If you can understand it, I'll check it off my list. After we finish with this, I'll show you some phrases written in other languages, and you will tell me if you can understand those." "Sounds easy enough," Izuku said. "What happens if I fail?" "It's not that kind of test. There is no passing or failing. Just fact-finding." He began by playing a short sound clip, and Izuku nodded before speaking. "He who hesitates is lost." "Correct. That was Latin, by the way." "Really?" "Yes." They continued on that way, but there were no languages on the list that Izuku couldn't understand, other than ones that were made by machines or animals. The same was not true when it came to reading. He did not understand anything written in Russian, Arabic, Chinese, or any other languages with different alphabets other than English, and he had to sound those out before he could translate. It was a little unsettling to know he could literally speak to anyone on the planet if he wanted to. You appear to be able to converse in any language, but if I were to ask you to tell me something in, say, French, without my speaking it to you first, could you do it?
I'm not sure. Talking to the man in the hospital is just normal. I didn't know I was speaking another language, which is super weird, by the way.
Ask me where the nearest post office is in French, Sir suggested.
Where's the nearest post office?
Izuku asked. Sir shook his head. You're speaking Japanese. Interesting. It's a good, useful quirk, but you're going to have to work to be truly fluent. I suspect you'd have to immerse yourself in each language you wanted to truly master, but simply being able to answer questions is undoubtedly valuable. Izuku nodded, thinking about how difficult it would be to learn to deliberately speak another language once he tried.
Sir?
Izuku asked, looking over the man's shoulder at a bulletin board on the wall behind him.
Who's that person?
Sir Night-Eye followed his gaze and turned to look at the several photos pinned on the board there. Which?
The one with the white hair and the cracked lips?
That's Tomura. Family name presumed to be Shigaraki, though there's no record of it, he answered after a brief pause.
That's not the villain that All Might fought, right?
Izuku asked, feeling his heart pick up speed. No. Sir said, studying Izuku intently, though he seems to have been his student, possibly even his son. Izuku said, swallowing hard.
I've seen him, recently.
Where exactly? Sir's focus sharpened on him suddenly, and he pressed a button on his desk. A moment later, All Might poked his head in. Sir waved him forward. Izuku has seen Shigaraki Tomura, Sir told All Might immediately. All Might's eyebrows rose, and he also looked at Izuku sharply.
I see him all the time,
Izuku admitted cautiously.
When I go to gymnastics, he's usually hanging out in front of the convenience store next door. I go there sometimes to get a sports drink to take with me to class.
Why didn't you say anything? All Might asked.
I don't remember ever meeting him before, though Granny Ito said I did,
Izuku explained. All for One remotely removed any memory of their interactions from his mind, Sir reminded All Might. Sir checked a paper that apparently had Izuku's daily schedule on it and nodded. You're scheduled for a gymnastics class tomorrow after school.
Yes, but I can't go until my leg gets better, Izuku said. I wanted to, but Dad said no.
All right then. It's the perfect chance to set up a stakeout, Sir said with practical reasoning. One of us will go and survey the area and see when and how he shows up. When Izuku doesn't arrive, he's bound to leave, and one of us can attempt to follow.
Why not just arrest him?
Izuku asked, feeling slightly revolted, knowing how close he'd been to the teen without even knowing it. He technically hasn't broken any laws that we know of or can prove, All Might said, frustration evident in his voice. We've only seen any sign of him the one time after my battle with All for One.
What happened then?
Izuku asked. All Might coughed up a little blood and looked helplessly at Sir Night-Eye. A surveillance camera near the Ito residence caught a hooded figure appearing out of a warp gate and destroying the restaurant and home, Sir said calmly. The footage didn't show his face, but the build was the same as was the white hair briefly visible in some of the frames. We're certain it was Tomura. Izuku had blanched and was sitting there stiffly, hands balled into fists. Sir Night-Eye paused and made eye contact with him before speaking. I immediately checked on the Ito family. They are completely fine and unaware of what's happened. There is nothing to suggest that the villains had any idea where they've gone, or what name they're using. The knot in Izuku's chest loosened some. He was still angry and sad and frustrated, but took comfort in knowing that Granny and her family were safe. "Can I take Izuku with me for a bit?" All Might asked Sir. Izuku didn't know why he was asking, but Sir nodded, so Izuku followed All Might, a little awkwardly in his splint, and they ended up in a room with lots of exercise equipment. All Might led him past machines and weights made especially for his enormous build and strength to a simple cylindrical bag, hanging from a chain in the ceiling.
"A punching bag?"
Izuku asked. "Yep. You looked like you could use some stress relief. Feel free to pound on this whenever you want." Izuku only hesitated for a moment before making a fist and punching the bag. Hard.
"Ow!"
he said, shaking his hand.
"What's in there? Concrete?"
"Ah, they had to make this to be able to stand up to my punches and kicks," he said apologetically. "I'll see about getting some boxing gloves in your size." Izuku looked at his knuckles to see them turning red and let a small laugh escape.
"I still feel a little better though. Thanks."
Izuku sat in one of the huge chairs in the sitting area, doing his homework while All Might went out on a call for help and Sir Night Eye was making calls to whomever he usually made calls to. Gran had woken up and shuffled away, and hadn't come back. Izuku wasn't sure where he lived. Once his homework was finished, Izuku was allowed to do some upper body exercises like pull-ups and bench presses, with a bot for a spotter that monitored him at all times. Finally, Sir appeared and told him that he wanted to drive Izuku home because he needed to have a word with his father, who had promised to meet them there. Once home, Izuku changed clothes and began preparations for dinner while Sir spoke to his father. Izuku knew that he was showing his father pictures of Tomura Kurogiri and Dr. Tsubasa, though his father had seen Tsubasa before, and ascertained that he hadn't seen any of them that he could recall. There have been reports of many petty criminals disappearing off of the streets lately. They've been seen entering Kurogiri's warp gate willingly, but none of them ever returned, Sir told them once Izuku joined them. "We suspect that Shigaraki Tomura may be attempting to amass a small army of men to command, as All for One commanded a large web of people. Unfortunately, we don't have the names or good descriptions of any of the men who have vanished, so we have no way of tracking any of them." "What about Tsubasa?" Izuku's dad asked. "That man needs to go to prison for his part in all of this." "I agree, but he's been elusive. He disappeared from his job immediately following All for One's defeat, and has only resurfaced once that we know of. We have some security footage of him going into a hospital posing as staff and stealing several blood samples and some equipment from a lab, and disappearing into a warp gate when he was done. We're still working on whose blood it was and why he might have wanted it." "He'd better hope I don't find him before you do," Izuku's dad told Sir, smoke escaping his mouth as his quirks stirred in his chest. Izuku knew his father didn't breathe fire very often, because it was hard on his esophagus and tended to give him terrible heartburn. It usually only happened when he was super angry, which hardly ever happened, or sometimes when he was upset, and occasionally when went out drinking with his work friends and had a little too much. "I'm afraid you'd have to stand in line for a shot at him," Sir said grimly in reply. "For now, Our biggest hope is in tracking Tomura and hoping he leads us to the others. Izuku knew that his days of going to gymnastics were now over, and wondered how he would ever feel safe again. How had they figured out about his gymnastics from Granny Ito? Dumb luck from his old school? There were a lot of variables. Too many. If that was the only location they knew for sure that he went to regularly, he was probably safe. But what if it wasn't? What if they'd followed him home one day? How would he know if the guy sitting near him on the train at any given time was stalking him? He sighed. Would they have to move again? The prospect made his heart feel heavy. Tomura didn't lead them to the others. He had shown up and waited until 15 minutes after the usual time Izuku arrived, and then disappeared around the corner of the building and entered a warp gate that appeared out of thin air, impossible to trace. The same thing happened the next 2 times Izuku missed gymnastics. And then Tomura actually went inside the gym and asked the receptionist if there was a student named Midoriya Izuku, and said that he was supposed to meet him there. The woman at the counter, silly girl, told him that Midoriya-kun had withdrawn from classes weeks ago. She did not, thankfully, give him any other information. Sir Night-Eye arranged for Midoriya's school computer file to be changed to reflect his former address, and his paper file to be destroyed. Izuku wasn't sure how he managed to get these things done, but he was grateful for it. In the end, they decided that moving would not solve anything. Teams were brought in to search the apartment for any hidden cameras, listening, or tracking devices, and everything came up normal. They scoured not only the apartment building security cameras, but also ones in surrounding areas when they could, for signs of any warp gates or anyone matching the description of any of their suspects. Anyone who looked the least bit suspicious was watched. It must have been a massive undertaking, but either way, they weren't being watched at home, or whoever was doing it was very, very clever. Izuku didn't know if this was a comfort or not. At any rate, things were kind of in a holding pattern. He still went to school, and after his staples were removed, began practicing with the judo club every day. His balance quirk disqualified him from any competition, just like in gymnastics, but he enjoyed the experience it gave him. The other members liked to spar with him, and to take turns to try and trick his quirk and knock him down. It was a lot of fun, and let Izuku feel like a normal kid for a while. He continued his weekend training, and made it through the entire final year of elementary school without incident or any new quirks appearing, for which they were immensely grateful. It wasn't until Izuku started his first year of middle school that he began wondering again if he was somehow cursed. Karchan was in his new homeroom class. Thank you so much for watching this video. I appreciate all the support you've given me. To say I love this chapter is an understatement. Karchan will be back in the mix of characters, and I'm excited to see how everything unfolds. Not only that, I have to thank you all so much for 500 subscribers. Like, holy shit. I love every single one of you. Thank you so much for being here. All credits goes to the original creator of this fanfiction. A is for Amy71 on AO3. I would highly appreciate it if you gave this video a like and you subscribe to the channel and you hit the notification bell to be notified of my next upload. There is no pressure to do so though. Thank you for visiting my cozy corner of the internet. Keep growing my sunflowers. Mwah.